Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar for today. Today, we're going to be talking about traditional food culture and diabetes in the United States. This is brought to you by the National Center for Health and Public Housing. So before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items. This is just a reminder to everybody that all participants are muted upon entry. Please make sure that you engage in the chat and also raise your hand if you would like to unmute your line during the presentation today. This meeting is also being recorded. The slides and the recording link will be sent via email to everybody after today's session. And also today we're going to be doing some engagement activities during the webinar. So please go to menti.com and enter the code 33680881. And this is just going to help you prepare for the upcoming activities that we will be doing. I'm just going to allow everybody 1 minute to enter that information. And in the meantime, so again, my name is Fide Pineda. I am the TTA manager here at NCHPH. And today we also have Dr. Jose Leon, who is our chief medical officer. And we will also have Chantel Moore, who is our communications manager. All right, so in case you don't have the chance to complete entering the information in menti.com, you can always look in the chat. Our communications manager has added that information in there. This is just some information about the National Center for Health and Public Housing. The mission of the National Center for Health and Public Housing is to strengthen the capacity of public housing primary care grantees and other health center grantees by providing training and a range of technical assistance. NCHPH is a project supported by the Health Resources and Services Administration and is a national training and technical assistance partner that is 100% financed by this grant. The information presented today are those of the author only. So for today, we will be discussing the impact of diabetes in ethnic and racial minorities living in the United States. We will also get a better understanding on non-adherence to medically recommended diets in racial and ethnic minorities. And we will examine nutrition considerations for racial and ethnic minorities in the United States.
Before you continue, someone is asking about closed captioned. Do we have that feature on for this webinar?
See, I will try to turn them on. I also need to yeah, let me give me 1 moment and then we should be able to. Just give me 1 moment. Okay. So while I try to figure that out, okay, don't worry. Just in the meantime, just give me a few more moments, and then we're gonna turn that option on, okay? Thank you. Okay, so also before we continue, this is just some background information about the health centers close to public housing. So as of 2021 health center data provided by HRSA, there were over 1,000 federally qualified health centers that served 30 million patients, 458 health centers that are in or immediately accessible to public housing that also serve 5.7 million patients, and 108 public housing primary care health centers that serve to 911,683 patients. Okay. Now, in terms of our public housing demographics, as of 2022 HUD resident characteristics data, there were 1.5 million residents, 2 persons per household, 91% that were low income, 32% that were female-headed households with children, and 38% that were disabled. In terms of race, 52% were white, 43% were African-American, 26% were Latinx, 19% elderly, and also 36% that were children. Now I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Jose Leon, who is going to talk about more information related to diabetes.
Thank you, Fide, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the country. So before we get into the topic and we have a brief discussion on culture and food and how these two have an impact on diabetes and diabetes management in our patients, we are going to have an interactive activity. With us is Chantel Moore, who is the communications manager at NCHPH, and she has an icebreaker and a fun game that we would like to go over with all of you, so we get into the topic. So Chantel.
Thank you, Dr. Leon. One moment, please.
Chantel, if you're having some technical difficulties, we can get started, and once you solve, okay, there we go.
All right, everyone. So this is a game of Jeopardy. Due for copyright reasons, this is also known as Jeopardy. We will be focusing on today's topic in reference to traditional food culture and diabetes. So a special thank you to the people who made this Slides Carnival and our rules. So this game will not be team-based for purposes of this webinar in time. Participants will select a category and a dollar amount, and if the question is incorrect, then someone else may attempt to answer. No points will be given. Participants are welcome to contribute through the chat, or they can raise their hand, and we will be able to answer your question. All right, so we have a total of 6 different categories: cultural foods, diet modifications, exercise, national dishes, diagnosing diabetes, and miscellaneous. So do we have any starters?
So you have a couple, Chantel, in the chat.
Okay, we'll start with miscellaneous for 1,000. Eye disease in diabetic patients is also known as diabetic blank. Retinopathy, correct. All right, the next question that we will answer is Cultural foods for $600. Some African American cuisine is also known as blank food. Soul food, that is correct. All right, let's see if we have any other takers. Diagnosing diabetes for 1,000. Please keep these requests rolling in. Before taking a fasting plasma glucose test, one must not eat for blank hours before the test. Okay, we have an answer here. 8 hours is correct. All right. Do we have any other takers? National dishes for 1,000. What is Mexico's national dish? All right, Mexico's national dish is known as mole. Good job, Vicki. Thank you. Next, we have miscellaneous for 800. Some blank complications in people with diabetes include dry, cracked skin and ulcers. This is something that is quite common in people with diabetes. They're often told to monitor them and take care of them. It is a tear of something. Feet, great job. All right, let's see what else we have here. We have diet modifications for 1,000. Instead of using ground beef, one could use ground blank or ground blank. Great job. Ground turkey or ground chicken is the answer.
All right, Chantal, we have time for one more.
Okay, I will pull one more. Okay, and then we have miscellaneous for 800. Oh, sorry about that. I think we have exercise for 200. One benefit of exercise for people with diabetes is improved blank sensitivity. Insulin is correct. Thank you all for your participation in Jeopardy!
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for this, Chantal. Fide, were you able to turn the closed caption?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to at this time, mostly because of the settings, since we already have the webinar going on. It may affect the whole live process. So my apologies for that.
One is asking about whether we can get a transcript.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something that we can do, and we apologize for this inconvenience. So we are gonna try to make sure that you guys get the recording, the scripts, the slides after the webinar is over. Thank you so much. So let's get started. This is a really interesting topic because we've been talking about diabetes for the last 3 years. We've been covering a lot of information on culture, on social determinants of health, on how to eat healthy, how to exercise. I see that many, if not all, are very knowledgeable, but just by seeing the responses that we got from the game that we just had with Chantel, and thank you, Chantel, for that. And this is an interesting topic for those health centers who are in or immediately accessible to public housing, and those health centers serving patients from different cultures and different backgrounds. In diabetes is a priority for HRSA, and it's been a priority for HRSA for the last 6 years. And throughout all these years, we've been seeing some changes. We've been seeing, for instance, that the latest data that we have, which is 2021 data from all health centers, 10% of those patients going to community health centers are patients with diabetes. It is the same for those health centers serving those living in public housing, 10%. And it is interesting to see that the 385 for the health centers located in or immediately accessible to public housing reported a percentage of 22%. So this is extremely important, specifically because when FIDE was talking about the demographics in public housing, we saw that 26% are Latin or Latinx, and there is a high percentage of African American individuals living in public housing as well. So this is a really good time and a really good opportunity to go over some of the cultural patterns and nutritional patterns that these patients have, because there are a couple of things that we are going to be able to modify. However, there will be others that we won't be able to modify. So we need to focus on those that we can modify. Next slide, please. So according to the US Census, and we can see the percentages of patients who are who reported to be either white or Black or African American or Native Hawaiian or Asian alone or Hispanics. So what we can see here is that the minority populations are growing in the United States, and we need to make sure that we address some of the concerns that they have, some of the cultural backgrounds that they also are bringing with them. And there is a process of acculturation, the process of learning or getting into the new culture here in the United States. But while that process is happening to many patients, we also as providers need to have a better understanding of what's happening with them. You know, I mean, every time that you come to the United States or you have a newcomer, this person is going to bring a lot of patterns, cultural patterns that are going to be, that we are going to modify, or we are going to be able to modify if we have a really patient-centered discussion with them. But at the same time, this is not an easy process for many people in the United States. And specifically, we are talking about low-income populations. They are not only from racial and ethnic minorities, but many of them are low income and they have 2 or 3 jobs. They have a full-time job, they have some part-time jobs. So for them, that process of acculturation is quite difficult. And many of them do not cook. So there's a family member cooking for them. So for them, it's really difficult to keep an eye on what they are eating. Next slide, please. We've been receiving updates from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The latest is that the numbers or the percentage of patients with diabetes continue to grow, as is the number of people with diagnosed diabetes. So we have this trend, and even though we are doing a lot and we are trying to help our patients and we are trying to understand what is happening, and we are always receiving training on new drugs, on new promising practices, on new evidence-based solutions. The problem is a huge problem. It's a public health emergency, not only in the United States, but around the world. So one of the things that we need to understand is what is behind that patient that we see every morning or every afternoon. What is happening behind this patient? Not only the social determinants of health, because we've been focusing on unemployment, we've been focusing on housing, we've been focusing on healthy food, but there is something else behind, and is how patients eat, for how long this patient exercise. So we need to understand our patients and their background and the problems and issues that they have, so we can provide a very a patient-centered approach and help them as individuals, because there is no one size fits all kind of solutions when we're talking about diabetes. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that we can't do anything about: family history. And if you have family history of diabetes, you are more likely to have diabetes. This is something that has been studied. Many people see and have studied genetics and whether or not there is some kind of hereditary issues going on. There is a lot of stuff going on, like type 1 diabetes, for instance. If a mother has type 2 diabetes, the newborn or the new kid is going to have a 26 or 1/26. That's the possibility of developing diabetes. Same for a father. It's about 1/17, the possibilities. But in type 2 diabetes, the family history is more what we have learned, or what we learned from our family. All these food patterns, all these cultural factors that we have. If you are from Latin America, you have beans, you have rice, you have corn as one of the main products, that are used in the kitchen of all these families. So and that is something that people somehow learn to use, and they will be using because it's part of their culture. Then the other thing is the race or ethnic background. That's something that we can't change. I mean, either we are white or we are blacks or we are yellow, or depending on our color of the skin or the background, the ethnicity that we have, that's something that we cannot change. As we get older, we are more likely to develop diabetes because our body doesn't function the same. The amount of insulin can be, or the production of insulin can be affected by other chronic medical conditions. And for women who develop diabetes during pregnancy, that's something that probably we can't control as well. However, there are other factors like weight, physical activity, blood pressure, cholesterol, smoking, alcohol, sleep, and stress and well-being. Those are things that we can modify, and that's the reason why we've been focusing on different issues, specifically on diet and exercise. I mean, there are some studies that if we are under stress or we are not sleeping enough, there are other hormones that are free, and then these hormones affect, insulin. So all these factors can be modified. There are some behavioral interventions that we can use. But today, we would like to have a very brief conversation on the diet of our patients. Next slide, please. And so again, CDC is reporting that if you are from any of the racial or ethnic minorities in the United States, you are more likely to have or to develop diabetes when you compare to the white or non-Hispanic populations. You can see on this slide, the American Indian or Alaska Natives are, the ones that are more likely to have diabetes, and the percentage is over 14%. And then Asian and non-Hispanic, and Hispanic and Black non-Hispanics are also more likely to develop diabetes. So there is something, like the culture or the food or what they are, or other factors that can be modified. In this case, the diet, that we can focus and help our patients, to manage or decrease the risk of developing diabetes. Next slide, please. Again, the percentage of non-Hispanic Black, when you compare them to the non-white, is 1.8. That's the ratio. Next slide. For the Hispanic population, the ratio is quite similar, and is 1.6. Next slide, please. And it is a little bit lower when you see the Hispanic, non-Hispanic Asian is about 1.3, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Next slide, please. So in order to understand a very complex disease, we need to focus on three circles, or three buckets that we need to analyze. The biological bucket is something, again, that probably we won't be able to change. If you have someone who has developed a resistance to insulin, that's difficult to handle. That's something that this bucket, the yellow bucket, probably won't be able to modify. The social bucket is how we can improve all the interpersonal factors and the social interactions and those social determinants of health affecting our patients and their culture. And we've been talking about acculturation, how we can motivate, how we can help our patients. And the psychological, there are some studies from the American Diabetes Association showing that people with anxiety or depressions are more likely to develop diabetes. Next slide, please. And so why we need to focus on food culture, on food and culture? Because food and culture are intertwined somehow. We can't discuss culture without talking about food. If you ask me about Italy, what are the first three or two things that come to my mind? Probably are the all the Roman history that we have studied when we were kids, and pasta. If we are talking about people from Mexico, I can think of their Aztec background, and tacos or enchiladas. If we are talking about Salvadorans, we can discuss many things, a couple of things that are relevant, like the civil war in El Salvador, but pupusas. We talk about Argentina, we can talk about the migration during World War II to Argentina, but everybody, the very first thing that comes to my mind is a really nice steak, from Argentina. So all these situations are intertwined, the food and the culture, and honestly, we use our eating partner because we develop social bonds. We have the conversation with the family, with friends, we have parties, we have reunions, we have religious activities. So it's the way that we can increase and make sure that we are part of a society and we are part of a culture. Next slide, please. So in regards to African Americans, we know that during slavery, they had whatever was available from their master's table, and that's something that we know that many of the dishes that we know, like macaroni and cheese, or fried chicken, or red beans, or cornbread, on this mashed potatoes and gravy, is part of their culture and is part of what they experienced during slavery. Next slide, please. When we talk about the Hispanic population, it's a bit more complex, because within the Hispanic population, we have people from different backgrounds. And I just mentioned Argentina, and when you compare the culture in Argentina, and then you compare it to another country in Central America, like Guatemala, probably is going to be totally different. And we cannot assume that because they speak the same language, they have the same food patterns, or they share the same culture. We need to be very careful with that as well. Next slide, please. And this population, as you know, is growing. Many, over 59% are from Mexico, and you see people from other countries who have come to the United States, each of them bringing new ounces of culture, but at the same time, new food and new meals. So the idea is not to learn all the national dishes and what they have, but to have just a better understanding when we talk to our patients, when we discuss what do you have for breakfast today, and then you will be able to understand the reason why in people from Central America, beans are part of the breakfast, and why they eat it is because they learn to eat it, and it's a crop that is easy to cultivate in that area. If you talk to someone from Uruguay, again, we're talking about tea. I'm not sure if you are familiar with mate, which is like a herbal hot beverage that they have, that is similar to coffee, but it is completely different to the tea that we are familiar with, like the green tea. So these things are helping us not only to understand our patients, but to make sure that we have a better understanding of what's going on in the communities that we serve. Next slide, please. So for the Hispanic culture, we have on your right-hand side different type of food, or dishes like tacos or asado, which is the steaks in South America, or the feijoada, which is in Brazil. And that's another thing that when we talk about Latin America, or we think that all of us speak Spanish, and for instance, those living in Brazil speak Portuguese, and we need to make sure that we understand all those issues, and how they adopted some of the diet from people from Spain when they were conquered, and at the same time they mix it with their traditional food, so the ancient food that they had. Next slide, please. So another one that we need to consider, based on what we saw on how diabetes affects different cultures, is the Alaska natives. And we know that in the past they subsisted, live on a high protein, high fat animal diet, and they consume a lot of fat, and they had other teas, instead of coffee, and how this has changed, they keep having this type of diet, but somehow has been modified with new people coming to Alaska and just mixing, some of the traditions with other cultures or other traditions, and how milk was introduced, and fruits and vegetables, even though they're still difficult for them to obtain because of the cold temperatures. At the same time, is something that is changing. We live now in a globalized world, and all these barriers probably are not barriers anymore, but still are affecting some of the populations that we serve. Next slide, please. So I'm going to stop for a moment, and I'm going to turn it over to Chantel. Again, we have some case studies about 3 people that we would like to discuss with all of you. And this is regarding their culture and their food. So Chantel, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Leon. Okay, everyone. So if you have not already, please visit www.menti.com and enter in the following code 33680881. Or you can scan the QR code on the screen if you're using a mobile device or a tablet. Once again, it is 33680881. All right, we're getting some voters, so people are logging in. I'll give you guys a few seconds. All right, so we are going to proceed. Rosa Fuentes. Rosa Fuentes is a retired 69-year-old woman from Mexico. Her husband passed away last year, and she sometimes cares for her grandchildren if her children are busy. Every day she eats breakfast and goes to mass, and afterwards she walks her dog. She always has a home-cooked meal, which can include oatmeal with honey and raisins, and a glass of orange juice for breakfast, Mexican rice and tacos for lunch, Mexican stew for dinner, horchata and aguas frescas to drink, and flan and gelatina for dessert. She does not eat out often, only on Sundays after Mass with her children and grandchildren. She was recently diagnosed with prediabetes at her annual wellness checkup, and no other health issues were found. Her fasting blood glucose level was 110. Her weight is within a healthy BMI range for her height. So we're going to start with the first question. What diet recommendations would you give this patient? Okay, we have limiting carbs, increase protein with every meal to balance out the sugar, eliminate orange juice. Good answer so far. Fruits and veggies, reduce sugar sweetened beverages frequency, switch to fresh fruits instead of raisins and orange juice, more protein, less honey, more fiber. All right. And having smaller portions of rice. All right, we're going to proceed to the next question. Would you recommend any physical activity for this patient? "30 minutes per day of walking."
Excellent.
Is walking or a basic exercise, walking 30 minutes for at least 3 times a week, make sure that it's low impact and that she's not a fall risk.
Nice response. I agree.
Very good. And increasing cardio and still walking the dog, playing games with the grandchildren. These are great suggestions. So we are going to proceed to the next question. What coaching goals would you recommend to this patient? So we would ask her what her goals are. Start with one change. That's a very good suggestion. Concrete, short-term, attainable goals that she can reasonably achieve. All right, seek guidance from a primary care provider. Excellent answers. We're going to proceed to the next question. The next person is Hector De Leon. Hector De Leon is an engineer in his mid-50s. He is the father of 4 school-age children. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes a couple of years ago and keeps failing at maintaining long-term healthy lifestyle habits due to stress and low back pain from sitting at an office job. His A1C was 8.2 1 year ago. For breakfast, he enjoys scrambled eggs, fruit, toast, and cremas with cinnamon and fruit. For lunch, he eats dinner leftovers or fast food, or he will skip lunch. For dinner, some of the things that he enjoys are sofrito with fried chicken, tostones, which are twice fried plantains, and for a snack, he enjoys fresh fruit or plantain chips. He also enjoys drinking soda, fruit juice, beer, and rum. So the first question is, what diet recommendations will you give this patient? All right, the DASH diet. How you can lessen fast food lunches. Yeah, maybe reduce it to a couple of times a week. Consistently eating meals and not skipping breakfast. Eliminating beer. Yes, that is very high in sugar. Having water, adding sugar-free flavorings, meal prep, decreasing alcohol usage, and asking a very important question, what are you willing to change? And watching out on the refined sugars. Excellent. And we're lastly to talk with a nutrition to help develop a doable plan. Would you recommend any physical activity for this patient? Yes, that's a good one. Using the stairs while you're at work. Start by going differently because of the history of back pain. Start with brisk walking, weekend activities with the kids, standing once an hour, standing 5 minutes every hour of sitting. That's a very good one. Have some short walks. That's very good. You do need to start incrementally when it comes to lifestyle changes. All right, and the next question. What coaching goals would you recommend to this patient? Assess if they would like to make any lifestyle changes. Ask what their health concerns are, what they're willing to change, Find a free smartphone app to track steps and calories. Moderation is key. All right, the next case study is Elizabeth Rios. Elizabeth Rios is in her mid-40s and works as an office worker. She is a mother to school-age children. She has trouble with work-life balance and was recently diagnosed with diabetes a couple of years ago. She has not had the time for regular checkups. Her A1C was out of the desired range when she was diagnosed, and she hasn't had it checked since then. She commutes to work every day via car, which takes 45 to 50 minutes one way. She works from 9 to 5 p.m. For breakfast, she typically eats a tortilla with cheese or cream of wheat. She packs lunch every day to save time on her break. She has to get her children ready for school each morning, and she picks them up from their grandparents' house after work, in which she prepares them for the next day because they are school-aged but still require assistance. So the question for Elizabeth is also, what diet recommendations would you give her? And this is an interesting one because due to her busy lifestyle, there would definitely be some recommendations that would need to be in place to help her better manage her diabetes. Meal prepping, physical activity, have a healthier breakfast, more fruits and veggies. That's a good idea, just meal prepping her meal prepping any kind of veggies that she has. Protein shakes for breakfast, checking sugar levels at work, having the kids help make a healthy dinner, and portioning some extras for lunches. That is true because we do not know exactly what she is eating for lunch. And engaging family in meal changes. The next question, would you recommend any physical activity for this patient? Yes, try walking with kids or doing exercises at home and including the kids. Walking more at work, grocery shopping with the children, taking a couple of 15-minute walks for breaks. Think about her favorite workout style. Yes, because some people feel compelled to exercise but do not want to do it to their personal tastes. Taking the stairs at work, 30 minutes a day of chosen activity, and that can help with her mental health, which is very important. Lastly, what coaching goals would you recommend to this patient? Given her very busy lifestyle, coaching would be a great way for her to have a framework of what she can do based off of her busy schedule. All right, we have take care of yourself. A new healthy habit each month. Find a group for accountability. Increase your social network of support, exactly, and check in with their mental health. All right. And that is all that we have for the case studies.
Thank you, Chantel. Thank you so much. So we've been discussing, or we discussed 3 case studies, all of them with a different background. I was a little bit concerned when I saw that we were recommending not to drink beer, but nobody had said anything about the wine. So I was a bit concerned about that. But then I saw the word alcohol and I got relief. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, we've been seeing that this person, just by reading the story, is probably from Puerto Rico, from one of the islands in the Caribbean, because of the plantains and everything, that was related to their diet. So there are, can we move or advance the slides, Peter? So there are a couple of things, that we need to, these are the take-home messages. One of them is, first, we need to educate our patients, right? The same way that you have done when we had the Mentimeter exercise, making sure that we understand the cultural background of our patients, what they eat, is going to be very difficult and almost impossible to change some of the patterns or tell them do not eat and stop eating this at all. But there are some alternatives, that the patient can have and still enjoy a couple of the things that they like. I saw something about tortillas and cheese. You can use a fat-free cottage cheese, for instance. You can instead. I saw that the wheat is an option, and once in a while, this person can have what they like and the way that they eat it is. I saw also someone's talking about moderation, and that moderation is the key. That is true. So in addition to educate our patients and provide all the materials that they need, we also need to empower our patients. I saw a response that I really like, the use of some apps, so patients can follow up what they are eating, how many times they are eating exactly the same type of food. And so that is extremely important. And the other one is to make sure that we are there when our patients need, when they have a question, either through their patients portal. I've seen some health centers. Yesterday we hosted a webinar and somebody talked about text messages or text messaging with patients, and making sure and follow up on a couple of things that they are doing. And you have the CHWs and the promoters doing an extraordinary, an outstanding job for these patients. So we need to, in order to make sure that we address all this, we need to follow this ABC type of message. We need to establish respect and trust. That is going to increase our credibility. We need to be very sensitive to the way that we communicate with patients. Try to not to use medical terminology, and how patients like to communicate. There are some patients who are very verbal, so there are others who like send messages. So all these are going to help us when we have patients from different cultures. Next slide, please. So we need to be consistent. Somebody talked about the opportunity to establish goals and baby steps. That is very, very interesting. Then we have to establish some partnerships. If we don't have a really good knowledge about the culture, there are some community leaders of the CHWs that we can get additional information from all these from all these people in the community, and they can help us with our patients. Next slide, please. So we need to make sure that we provide the education materials that they need, and making sure that if we can tailor some of the messages, we can go to different federal organizations providing some information, but some of them need to be tailored and to the populations that we serve. Next slide, please. And just some examples here from someone who is African American, and if we can modify, the same way that you did when we did the exercise, the Mentimeter exercise. And if someone has 2 fried eggs and 2 sausage patties and buttermilk biscuits and coffee and sugar, we can use egg substitutes or homemade sausages, whole wheat toast, etc. Same for lunch modification. We need to first make sure that we understand what the patients are doing, and then we can help them to modify their diet. Next slide, please. For a Mexican American, same. We have 3 case studies. For someone who is eating refried beans with sausage, we can use boiled beans instead of the refried beans, or chili sauce instead of the Mexican sausage or chorizo. And there are some alternatives, but again, let's make sure that we understand that there will be things that we won't be able to change in our patients, that it will take time to modify these diets, and we need to be very respectful of that. I mean, that's the main message for today's webinar. Next slide, please. Other examples, on how patients can replace or substitute some of the things that they eat. And the slides will be given to all of you. And I'm running a little bit because we are almost running out of time, but next slide, please. The same for some grains and some changes with either pasta or pastries or croissant rolls or biscuits. Next slide, please. Other examples on how we can change or replace, some of the proteins that the patients are eating, and how they can substitute these proteins, with something that is more healthy for them, or healthier for them. Next slide, please. Same with dairy. Next slide. And the fats and oils, exactly the same. Mayo, for instance, instead of using mayo, we have now yogurt, and the unsweetened yogurt. That's something that we can use instead of this, and it's being used regularly now. The salad dressings, we can change it for vinegar or something else. But again, we need to make sure that first we educate the patients, that they know the risks, that they know exactly what they're doing and how they can change all these patterns. Next slide, please. In regards to diets, I mean, we need to make sure that we have something similar to this. We could see and see different portions, and how many portion of each of these things that patients eat. That's going to help us understand, and it's going to help patient understand what they are eating. Next slide, please. And this is the A to Z list of what we need to know about diabetes and how we can help patients. Again, diabetes is not is a very complex disease. It requires a lot of patient-centered education, and many people from our team helping us. So this is A to Z, what we need to know, in addition to drugs and medications and insulin and pancreas and liver disease and cardiovascular disease. In regards to the ABCs of what, Carrie, I'm talking specifically about how people, all the things that we need to know about diabetes is not just to recommend 30 minutes of exercise. We need to make sure that sometimes we have unconscious bias, or we don't understand the language, and because of the language we get somehow, you have 2 or 3 more patients waiting, you know, and someone has difficulties communicating with you, you know, it is something that we need to make sure that we understand. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you so much, Fide. We can give at least a minute in case there is a Q&A, in case there is a question.
Yep, for sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Leon and Chantel, also for the great presentation and all the awesome activities that we completed. So now we're just going to open it up for some questions. You're more than welcome to submit your question in the chat, or if you would also like to unmute your line, let us know. And yes, the slides will be available to download. We're going to send the slides after today's session via email. And thank you, Dennis, for that feedback. We're glad that you found the alphabet very useful. Okay, so we don't have any questions at the moment. This is just a kind of reminder to please complete our post-evaluation survey. The window is going to pop up as soon as you log out of the Zoom meeting. So if you can please fill that out for us, that will be very helpful as well. And also, if you have any follow-up questions, you can also contact us here. This is our contact information. For Dr. Jose Leon is jose.leon@namgt.com. My contact information is fide@namgt.com. And for our communications manager, Chantel Moore, cmoore@namgt.com. And
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yep. And have a nice day.